All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to dissect fear itself. We're diving into some of the most terrifying, true stories from the YouTube channel Mr. Nightmare to figure out what is it that really scares us? What makes a scary story tick? Let's get into it. So let's just kick things off with a line that cuts right to the bone. Picture this. You're home alone. Maybe it's late. You're in what's supposed to be your coziest, safest room. Suddenly, you hear these weird splashing sounds from the backyard. You kill the lights to get a better look, and that's when you hear it, heavy breathing right on the other side of the grass. This quote, it actually comes from a story about a man who literally emerged from a pond in the backyard. And man, it just perfectly sets up our first big theme, that absolute terror of being watched where you should feel the safest. All right, so our first theme, the invader in the house. This has got to be one of our most primal fears, right? The idea that the one place you think you can lock the world out is exactly where the danger is trying to get in. So let's think about this scenario for a second. It's a huge milestone, right? You're living alone for the first time, you've got your own place, total freedom. But for one woman, that dream pretty quickly turned into a living nightmare. It all started with these strange knocks on her door, late at night. And then came the notes, these unsettling notes left right where she was guaranteed to find them. Now, at first, she tried to rationalize it. Maybe it's a mistake, someone's looking for the old landlord, Michelle, right? But then she gets this note. And just like that, the terror becomes intensely personal. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't the wrong house. They knew her name, and they were making sure she knew they were watching. Okay, that's a terrifying thought for sure, but what if the invader doesn't even need to break in? What if they're already inside? Let's dig into a fear that starts as this tiny, nagging suspicion and just grows into something absolutely horrifying, something that was right there the whole time. Yeah, for one young boy, the horror wasn't a sudden shock. It was a slow burn. It happened through these little, inexplicable events right in his own bedroom. First, his nightlight starts changing color all by itself. Weird. Then, he starts finding it unplugged in the morning. Okay, weirder. And then one day, it's just gone, vanished. And that's when he starts hearing these faint rustling noises from the closet. Of course, his parents just brush it off, you know how it is. But for him, the evidence was undeniable. Something was in his room. And this is where the horrifying truth comes out. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a glitchy nightlight. It was a person who had dug a literal tunnel from the woods nearby, right through the foundation of the house, and into the back of this little boy's closet. Someone was secretly getting into his room every single night for over a month. So whether it's the man coming out of the pond, the stalker leaving those creepy notes, or the intruder literally tunneling into a closet, all of these stories are hitting the exact same nerve. They're all about that primal fear, the complete and total loss of safety in the one place on Earth you're supposed to be protected. Okay, let's move on. Section 2, the stranger in the dark. So now we're stepping outside the home. We're moving from threats that get in to all the unpredictable dangers that are just out there, lurking in the world. Now, what's really interesting here is how these stories play with two totally different kinds of fear. On one hand, you've got a threat you can see and understand. Like you go on a dating app match and bam, it's a setup. You're trapped. You know what the danger is. But then there's the other kind, the ambiguous threat. You're walking your dog and you hear a muffled help from the darkness. Is it a kid, an adult, a trap, a prank? The horror there isn't in what you know, it's in what you don't know. It's the uncertainty that paralyzes you. And look at how an external mystery can just totally take over your mind. For this one guy, it started with something simple. His neighbor has a new, unfamiliar black van. Okay, no big deal. But then it's only there at night. And then he sees the neighbor carrying this long, heavy black bag into it at 5 a.m. His curiosity turns into suspicion, then obsession. It all culminates in him literally following the van to an abandoned gas station, which ends up triggering an alarm and a full-on police raid of his neighbor's house. Wild. But hey, not all fears are a slow burn like that. Sometimes the horror hits you all at once, and you can boil it down to a single, terrifying number. Let's go back to that Tinder date gone wrong. You walk into an apartment expecting to meet one person. The door shuts behind you, and you turn around to see 3 men waiting for you. That one number, 3, it just says it all. It's the moment you realize you've completely lost control. All right, our third section, the unseen and unexplained. So far, we've been talking about threats from other people. But let's be honest, some of the most chilling stories, they're the ones that just don't make sense. The ones that defy any logical explanation, where it feels like reality itself is starting to crack. And to understand this, we have to talk about a concept called the uncanny. You know that feeling? It's when something is super familiar, but also wrong, deeply wrong. An ordinary object, a place you've seen 1,000 times, suddenly becomes strange and unsettling. That's the uncanny. It gets under your skin because it's not just mysterious, it feels like a glitch in the system. Think about this story. A kid has a toy car. Just a normal toy car, he's had it for years. It's tucked away in another room for the night. But then, in the dead of night, he watches in total terror as that same car rolls into his bedroom doorway all by itself, its little lights flashing. That's the uncanny in action. A familiar, harmless toy has just become something alien and terrifying. Or how about this one? A girl comes out of a school bathroom that she thought was totally empty. Her friend, waiting outside, immediately asks her, "Who is that standing right behind you in the stall?" The friend swears she saw someone standing impossibly close to her, like right up against her back. But the girl in the stall, she never saw or heard a single thing. The true horror there is the idea of a presence you can't even perceive. Chilling. Okay, so this brings us to our final section, our enduring fear. After all this, why? Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we actively seek out these nightmares? Why are we so drawn to terrifying stories and even to explainers like this one that pick them apart? Well, one really compelling theory is that these stories are basically a threat simulation. It's like a flight simulator for our fears. They let us confront our absolute deepest anxieties, home invaders, stalkers, the creepy thing in the dark, but all from a totally safe distance. It's a way to feel the thrill of survival without any of the actual danger. And maybe it's also a kind of training exercise, a cautionary tale that reminds us, hey, lock your doors, trust your gut, and maybe be a little more wary of strangers. Because in the end, that's what these true stories really do, right? They hold a mirror up to our own fears. They tap into what we're all collectively anxious about, and they leave us with one final lingering question to think about long after we're done here.